I want you to listen to me carefully, because what I am about to remind you is something you once knew but forgot. You have been told that the universe is watching you, judging you, testing you, rewarding you when you are good and punishing you when you are not. And because you believed that, you have lived as someone small, someone waiting, someone hoping to be chosen. But I tell you now, the universe does not judge you. It reflects you. It does not reward you. It reproduces you. It does not test you. It mirrors you. You think your words create your life, but your words are only the surface. What creates your life is what you assume to be true about yourself. And I am not speaking about what you say in front of others. I am speaking about what you quietly accept about yourself when you are alone. That silent acceptance inside you is the creative power. You may stand in front of a mirror and declare that you are wealthy, loved, powerful, but if inside you still feel unworthy, still feel lacking, still feel afraid, then what you are truly sending out is lack and fear. And the world, faithful and obedient, will arrange itself around that inner confession. You must understand this clearly. You are not a victim reacting to life. You are the cause from which life flows. Your imagination is not fantasy. It is the workshop of reality. Every condition you see around you first existed as a state within you. You lived it in feeling before you touched it in form. When you worry, you rehearse a future of fear. When you resent, you rehearse a future of conflict. When you feel abandoned, you rehearse a future of separation. And then you are surprised when the world performs the script you have been emotionally practicing. I am not asking you to control the world. I am asking you to control your state. Because when you change your state, the world must change to match you. It has no choice. The outer world is an echo, and you are the voice. You have tried to change circumstances directly. You have tried to push, to force, to struggle, to negotiate with reality. But you cannot change the reflection without changing the face. You cannot change the echo without changing the sound. If you want a new world, you must become a new self. Ask yourself now, who do you believe you are? Not who you wish to be, not who you pretend to be, but who you believe you are. That belief is shaping your days. If you believe you are overlooked, life will overlook you. If you believe you are unlucky, life will confirm it. If you believe you are chosen, life will begin to arrange evidence for that belief. The universe does not respond to your wishes. It responds to your identity. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are conscious of being. And this is not poetry. This is law. So, I tell you, stop begging life to change. Stop asking the world to give you what you refuse to feel within yourself. Instead, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume you already are the one you desire to be, not tomorrow, not when conditions improve, but now. Feel what it would feel like if it were already true. Let that feeling saturate you. Walk from it, think from it, speak from it. Do not try to get it. Become it, because when you become it in consciousness, the world must conform. You are not here to chase reality. You are here to define it. And the moment you accept that you are the cause, you stop fearing the effect. You must understand something that may unsettle you at first. The universe does not hear your words. It does not respond to your sentences, your affirmations, your complaints, or your prayers spoken in panic. It responds only to your state of being. It responds to the frequency of what you feel to be true. You may say, I am successful, but if inside you feel like a failure, the feeling is the command. You may say, I am loved, but if inside you feel rejected, that feeling is the decree. The universe does not argue with you. It does not correct you. It does not analyze your vocabulary. It simply obeys the emotional tone that lives beneath your words. Imagine a radio. If you tune the dial to a specific frequency, you will hear the music that matches it. You cannot argue with the radio. You cannot shout at it to play a different song while refusing to move the dial. In the same way, you cannot shout abundance while remaining tuned to scarcity. You cannot demand peace while remaining tuned to fear. The dial is your inner state. You have been trying to change the song without changing the frequency. That is why you become frustrated. That is why you feel unheard. But you are not unheard. You are perfectly heard at the level that truly matters. When you repeat affirmations without changing your inner conviction, you are like someone whispering wealth while gripping poverty in their chest. The vibration of poverty is louder than the whisper of wealth. The universe hears the chest, not the lips. I want you to test this for yourself. Think of something that once frightened you deeply. Notice how your body reacts even now. Your heart may tighten. Your breath may shift. Your muscles may contract. Nothing is happening in the outer world, yet your body responds as if it were real. That reaction is frequency. That reaction is signal. That reaction is creation in motion. Your thoughts generate images, but your feelings give them life. A thought is a seed, but feeling is the soil. Without feeling, the seed remains dormant. With feeling, it germinates. So when you dwell in anxiety, you are not just thinking anxious thoughts. You are watering a garden of anxious outcomes. You say you want wealth, but when you check your bank account, you feel fear. In that moment, fear becomes your broadcast. You say you want love, but when someone delays a message, you feel unworthy. In that moment, unworthiness becomes your transmission. The universe cannot interpret your preferences. It can only amplify your state. You must stop trying to convince the world with language. Instead, convince yourself with feeling. The moment you feel the wish fulfilled, the moment you accept inwardly that it is done, you change the frequency. And once the frequency changes, the outer world begins to reorganize, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, but always faithfully. This is why gratitude is powerful, not because it flatters the universe, but because it shifts your state. When you are grateful for something as though it already exists, you move from wanting to having. Wanting vibrates absence. Having vibrates completion. The universe responds to completion. Do you see how precise this is? The universe is deaf to your vocabulary but sensitive to your conviction. It does not care what you declare publicly. It responds to what you privately assume. And assumption is not intellectual agreement. Assumption is emotional acceptance. You cannot fake a frequency for long. You may attempt to smile while feeling despair, but your body betrays you. Your tone betrays you. Your posture betrays you. The signal is always stronger than the script. That is why embodiment matters. Stand as the one who already has it. Breathe as the one who already is it. Let your nervous system learn the new state. When you feel lacking, do not condemn yourself. Simply recognize that you have tuned the dial to a station you no longer wish to hear. Then gently move the dial. Move it through imagination. Move it through gratitude. Move it through deliberate feeling. Not force, but persistence. If you persist in a state long enough, it hardens into fact. What you repeatedly feel becomes natural. What becomes natural becomes visible. The world you see is yesterday's frequency. The world you will see tomorrow is today's sustained state. You are not trying to persuade the universe. You are selecting a frequency, and selection requires awareness. Become aware of how you feel throughout the day, not in judgment, but in authorship. Ask yourself, if this feeling were to multiply, would I welcome the result? If the answer is no, then choose again. You are not powerless before life. You are broadcasting to it constantly. The question is not whether you are creating. The question is whether you are creating consciously. So I tell you, do not waste energy shouting at the sky. Instead, quiet yourself and listen inward. Notice what you truly believe about yourself. Notice what you expect. Notice what you fear. That expectation is prayer. That fear is rehearsal. That belief is command. And once you understand that the universe only understands frequency, you will stop begging and start becoming, because becoming is the only language it recognizes. Now, I want you to go deeper with me, because if you truly understand the nature of vibration, you will stop treating your inner life casually. Vibration is not a mystical decoration. It is the structure of your experience. It is the invisible architecture that holds your visible world in place. When I speak of vibration, I am not speaking about something abstract. I am speaking about the combination of your thoughts, your feelings, and your bodily state. These three together form the signal you broadcast every moment. Thought initiates the pattern, feeling energizes it, and the body anchors it into your nervous system. A thought alone is weak. You can think of being wealthy without feeling wealthy, and nothing changes. But when thought and feeling unite, something shifts. Feeling is the charge. Feeling is the electricity that animates the image. If thought is the blueprint, feeling is the builder. You have experienced this many times. You can imagine biting into a lemon, and your mouth begins to water. No lemon exists in your hand, yet your body responds. Why? Because the body does not distinguish between imagined and physical experience when emotion is involved. When you feel it, your body accepts it as real. This is why your body is not separate from your imagination. Your body is the instrument through which imagination becomes embodied. When you repeatedly feel anxious, your shoulders tighten, your breathing becomes shallow, your posture collapses. Over time, this posture reinforces the emotion. The signal strengthens, and when you repeatedly feel confident, your spine straightens, your breath deepens, your eyes lift. The body aligns with the assumption. That alignment amplifies the frequency. You are not just thinking yourself into a new life. You are embodying yourself into it. You must understand that your nervous system memorizes states. If you dwell long enough in fear, fear becomes familiar. If you dwell long enough in worthiness, worthiness becomes natural. What becomes natural feels normal. What feels normal becomes your baseline vibration. And your baseline vibration is what life consistently mirrors back to you. You say you want love, but your baseline is guardedness. You say you want success, but your baseline is doubt. The baseline always wins, not because the universe is cruel, but because the universe is consistent. It reflects what is stable within you. So the true work is not forcing positive thoughts. The true work is stabilizing a new state. And stabilization requires repetition. It requires you to return again and again to the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it feels less like imagination and more like identity. Identity is vibration crystallized. When you say this is just who I am, you are describing a vibration that has been practiced long enough to feel permanent. But identity is not fixed. It is practiced, and what has been practiced can be replaced. If you have practiced insecurity for years, do not condemn yourself when confidence feels unnatural. Of course, it feels unnatural. It has not yet been embodied. But the moment you begin to deliberately feel secure, even in small moments, you are rewiring your internal pattern. You must stop treating your emotions as random reactions. They are instructions. They are permissions. They are signals telling life what to continue. I want you to notice how you feel when you speak about your future. Do you feel expansion or contraction? Do you feel certainty or hesitation? Your body always reveals your true vibration. Words can lie. Posture cannot. Breath cannot. The subtle tension in your chest cannot. This is why embodiment is essential. Do not only imagine the future you desire. Sit as that person would sit. Walk as that person would walk. Let your nervous system rehearse the new identity. The body is not an obstacle to manifestation. It is the gateway. There is a coherence between heart, mind, and body. When your thoughts contradict your feelings, you create interference. When your feelings contradict your posture, you create distortion. But when thought, feeling, and body align, the signal becomes clear, and a clear signal produces clear results. You are always vibrating something. You cannot turn it off. Even neutrality is a vibration. Even indifference carries tone. The question is not whether you vibrate. The question is what you have accepted as true about yourself. If deep within you believe you are chosen, you will unconsciously stand differently, speak differently, expect differently, and expectation shapes perception. You begin to notice opportunities you once ignored. You interpret events differently. You move with subtle authority. All of this begins within. Do not underestimate the power of sustained feeling. A single moment of inspiration is not enough. A passing affirmation is not enough, but a repeated emotional rehearsal becomes destiny. You must take responsibility for your internal climate, because your internal climate determines the harvest. If you feel resentment daily, you plant resentment daily. If you feel gratitude daily, you plant abundance daily. The soil does not argue with the seed, and remember this carefully. Your vibration is not what you display publicly. It is what you consistently dwell in privately. The world does not respond to your performance. It responds to your state, so begin observing yourself with honesty, not with shame, with authorship. Ask yourself what you have been practicing emotionally. Ask yourself what identity you have been rehearsing, and then decide if that rehearsal deserves to become permanent, because vibration is simply practiced identity, and identity can change the moment you choose to feel differently and persist in that feeling until it feels like you. You are not at the mercy of frequency. You are the generator, but you must become conscious of what you are generating. Now I want you to look closely at something that has quietly shaped your reality for years: the language of need. You have been taught that intense wanting creates results, that if you desire something strongly enough, you will eventually receive it. But I tell you clearly, need is not creative power. Need is confirmation of absence. When you say, "I need money," you are not declaring wealth. You are declaring that money is missing. When you say, "I need love," you are not affirming connection. You are affirming loneliness. The universe does not interpret your intention. It multiplies your state, and the state of need carries the vibration of not having. I want you to notice how need feels in your body. It tightens your chest. It shortens your breath. It creates urgency. It produces a subtle anxiety that whispers something is incomplete. That contraction is your signal. That tension is your broadcast. And contraction can only reproduce more contraction. There is a profound difference between desire and need. Desire can be creative, light, expansive. Desire can be a joyful preference, but need is heavy. Need says, "I cannot be whole until this appears." The moment you accept that thought, you have postponed your wholeness into the future, and what you postpone continues to remain distant. You do not attract from deficiency. You attract from identity. If you identify as someone lacking, life confirms lack. If you identify as someone already inwardly fulfilled, life begins to reflect fulfillment. Identity is always stronger than request. The universe responds to who you are being, not to what you are begging for. This is why gratitude transforms everything. Gratitude is not flattery towards some external power. Gratitude is psychological completion. When you feel grateful, you move into the state of already having. You are no longer reaching outward. You are resting inwardly. And rest is a sign of possession. Think carefully about this. When you are grateful, your body softens. Your shoulders relax. Your breathing deepens. There is expansion instead of contraction. Expansion is the vibration of having, and having multiplies naturally. You do not become grateful after the miracle arrives. The miracle follows the state of gratitude. Gratitude signals it is done. You may say this feels unnatural, because you have practiced needing for so long that gratitude without visible evidence feels strange. But unfamiliar does not mean false. It simply means you have not stabilized it yet. When you desire something desperately, notice how often anxiety accompanies that desire. You check for signs. You measure progress. You wonder when it will happen. That wondering is distance. That anxiety is resistance. Now imagine ordering something with full certainty that it will arrive. You do not panic. You do not obsess. You do not doubt. You expect. That expectation carries calm assurance. That calm assurance resembles gratitude far more than need. Gratitude says it is already forming. Need says it is missing. Gratitude says I am complete. Need says I am incomplete. The world can only echo what you claim inwardly. I am not telling you to suppress desire. I am telling you to remove desperation from it. Hold your desire gently. Enjoy imagining it. Feel thankful that unseen arrangements are already unfolding. Let gratitude become your baseline state, not because you see proof, but because you understand law. When you wake in the morning, instead of thinking, "I hope today brings change," say inwardly, "Thank you that change is already underway." Feel it in your body. Let that feeling replace the familiar tension of waiting. Waiting keeps you separate. Gratitude brings you into alignment. You have lived in the language of need long enough. You have rehearsed lack until it feels normal. Now rehearse completion. Rehearse sufficiency. Rehearse wholeness. Because you do not attract what you chase with desperation. You attract what you embody with quiet certainty. Shift from "I need" to "I am grateful." Shift from seeking to possessing. When you make that shift sincerely, not mechanically but emotionally, you move from contraction to expansion, and life reflects expansion without struggle. Remember this carefully. The universe does not reward effort rooted in fear. It reflects identity rooted in feeling. So choose the feeling of having, choose the calm of completion, choose the gratitude of fulfillment, and remain there long enough for it to become natural to you. Now I want you to understand something even more practical. Your body is not separate from your manifestation. Your body is the antenna through which you broadcast your state. You may believe that creation happens only in thought, but thought without embodiment remains weak. Your body is the amplifier. Your posture, your breath, your tone, your gaze, all of it is part of the signal you send into the world. You cannot think abundance while physically embodying fear. You cannot assume confidence while your shoulders collapse and your breath trembles. The body reveals the truth of your state. Words may attempt to override it, but the body speaks louder than affirmation. I want you to observe yourself during moments of doubt. Notice how your chest tightens, how your jaw clenches, how your spine curves forward. That contraction is not random. It is the physical imprint of a state. And when that imprint becomes habitual, it becomes your baseline vibration. Now observe yourself when you feel secure. Even briefly, notice how your breathing deepens. Notice how your body opens. Notice how your eyes lift. That openness is also a vibration. The body is always translating your assumptions into posture. This is why embodiment must become deliberate. Do not wait for outer success to stand confidently. Stand confidently now. Do not wait for love to arrive before softening your heart. Soften now. Do not wait for wealth before relaxing your nervous system. Relax now, because when the body shifts, the state shifts, and when the state shifts, the world reorganizes. Your nervous system memorizes what you rehearse. If you rehearse stress daily, stress becomes your familiar climate. If you rehearse calm certainty daily, certainty becomes natural. What becomes natural no longer feels forced, and what feels natural becomes your identity. You say you want to feel worthy, yet your body has practiced unworthiness for years. It has practiced shrinking. It has practiced apologizing. It has practiced hesitating. Of course, worthiness feels unfamiliar, but unfamiliar does not mean false. It simply means untrained. You must train your body to inhabit the state you choose. Sit as the person you desire to be would sit. Walk as that person would walk. Speak from the diaphragm instead of the throat. Let your movements carry quiet assurance. This is not performance. This is rehearsal. Remember the lemon experiment. Your body reacts to imagined experience as if it were real. That means your body can learn a new identity through imagination paired with feeling. When you imagine success and allow your body to respond with expansion rather than tension, you are conditioning a new baseline. Your body is not an obstacle to overcome. It is the doorway. It is the bridge between imagination and form. When your body and imagination align, coherence is created, and coherence strengthens the broadcast. Think about how athletes train. They do not wait until the competition to feel strong. They rehearse strength. They embody the victory before it occurs. In the same way, you must embody the state before it materializes. If you repeatedly imagine abundance but your body remains in survival mode, the signal is mixed. Mixed signals produce delayed results, but when your body relaxes into trust while imagining abundance, the signal becomes clear. Breath is especially powerful. Shallow breath signals danger. Deep breath signals safety. If you breathe as though you are safe, your nervous system begins to accept safety as truth. And from safety, Creativity flows. From safety, expansion becomes possible. I want you to try something simple. Sit upright. Relax your shoulders. Breathe slowly and deeply. Imagine that what you desire is already secured. Notice how your body responds. That response is not fantasy. It is rehearsal. The more often you rehearse it, the more stable it becomes. You cannot separate inner assumption from physical expression. They are intertwined. When you change one, you influence the other. If you cannot yet control your thoughts consistently, begin with your body. Change your posture, change your breath, change your pace. The body will pull the mind upward. Do not underestimate subtle shifts. A slight lift of the chin, a slower exhale, a calmer tone. These are not small things. They are adjustments to your antenna, and when the antenna adjusts, the reception changes. You have lived much of your life reacting physically to outer circumstances. Now begin responding physically from chosen states. Instead of collapsing when confronted with uncertainty, breathe deeply and remain steady. Instead of tightening when facing delay, relax and assume movement is already underway. Your body is always broadcasting. Even silence carries posture. Even stillness carries tone. The world reads you at levels you do not consciously notice. But more importantly, your nervous system reads you, and it mirrors back to you experiences that match your internal regulation. So treat your body as sacred equipment. Train it gently. Guide it intentionally. Let it practice expansion until expansion feels natural. Let it practice confidence until confidence no longer feels forced. Because when your body, your feeling, and your imagination align, you are no longer hoping. You are embodying, and embodiment is the language reality understands. Now I must prepare you for something that confuses many who begin this work. The delay between inner change and outer evidence. You may shift your state today. You may feel certainty today. You may embody gratitude today, and yet tomorrow your outer world appears unchanged. If you do not understand this principle, you will abandon your new state too soon. This delay is not failure. It is simply the echo of yesterday's vibration still dissolving. Imagine steering a large ship. When you turn the wheel, the ship does not instantly change direction. It moves gradually. The momentum of its previous course continues for a time. Your life moves the same way. The outer world is the momentum of previous assumptions. When you shift inwardly, the new direction is set, but the visible world requires time to reflect it. Many people change their state for a few days, then panic when nothing happens. They look at their bank account, they look at their relationships, they look at circumstances and conclude that nothing works. In that moment, they return to doubt. And by returning to doubt, they restore the old direction. You must understand that what you see today is not proof of your present state. It is evidence of your past state. The world you observe is delayed feedback. It is yesterday's broadcast made visible. If you react emotionally to it, you reinforce the old pattern. Think of a star in the sky. The light you see may have left that star years ago. The star itself may have already changed. Yet you are still witnessing old light. In the same way, your present circumstances may be the light of old assumptions still traveling toward you. Do not mistake delayed evidence for present truth. This delay is a form of mercy. If every fleeting thought instantly materialized, you would live in chaos. The delay allows you to stabilize a new state before it crystallizes into form. It gives you time to choose consciously instead of accidentally. You must learn to remain faithful to the unseen. When you have assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled, remain there even when nothing appears to move. Your persistence is what bridges the gap between imagination and manifestation. There is a pattern that often occurs. Just before change becomes visible, circumstances may appear to intensify in the opposite direction. This is not contradiction. It is transition. Old structures are rearranging. Old assumptions are surfacing to be released. If you panic at that moment, you interrupt the process. I want you to notice how quickly you seek proof. You assume abundance in the morning. Then by afternoon you look for confirmation. When none appears, doubt enters. That doubt resets the signal. Instead of living from fulfillment, You return to waiting. Waiting implies uncertainty. Certainty does not wait. Certainty rests. If you truly believed something was done, you would not measure its progress daily. You would continue living from the state as though it were inevitable. Do not micromanage the how. Do not obsess over the when. Your responsibility is the state. The arrangement of events is not your burden. When you remain in the new state consistently, life organizes circumstances in ways you could not have planned. Often the path will not look logical. You may experience unexpected conversations, sudden endings, surprising opportunities. These are part of what I call the bridge of incidents. They are the natural unfolding between assumption and fulfillment. Do not judge them too quickly. There is also another trap during delay, the temptation to revert to your old identity because it feels familiar. Familiarity is comforting even when it is limiting. But if you return to it, you re-establish the old baseline. You must become more loyal to your chosen state than to current appearances. If the outer world shows lack, remain inwardly fulfilled. If it shows delay, remain inwardly certain. If it shows confusion, remain inwardly clear. Time is not your enemy. Time is the interval in which inner conviction hardens into outer fact. The delay tests nothing but your stability, not your worthiness, not your morality, not your intelligence, only your stability. If you change your state and then abandon it at the first sign of no evidence, you are like someone planting a seed and digging it up daily to see if it is growing. Growth requires trust. It requires continuity. So I tell you gently, do not interpret delay as denial. Do not interpret silence as absence. Continue feeling the fulfillment. Continue embodying the identity. Continue living from the end. When you remain consistent, something subtle happens. The old emotional charge attached to your desire fades. It begins to feel normal. It begins to feel expected. And when it feels normal, manifestation is near. The delay is simply the transition between who you were and who you are becoming. Remain steady. Remain aligned. Let the momentum shift completely. Because the outer world cannot resist a sustained inner state. It can only reflect it, even if it takes a little time to rearrange itself around you. Now I want to speak to you about something that may challenge what you were taught about fairness and morality. You were told that life rewards the good and punishes the bad. That if you are kind enough, patient enough, humble enough, the universe will eventually recognize your virtue. But you have seen with your own eyes that this is not always how it appears. You have seen people who complain constantly continue to struggle, and people who believe confidently move forward. This is not because life is unfair. It is because life is obedient. The law does not judge character. It reflects consciousness. It does not evaluate whether you deserve something. It responds to what you assume to be true. This is what I mean when I say the law is blind to morality. It does not measure goodness. It mirrors identity. If you believe you are overlooked, life will overlook you, even if you are generous. If you believe you are unlucky, life will confirm it. Even if you are honest, if you believe you are powerful, life will respond to that conviction, even if you doubt whether you deserve it. The law does not reward virtue. It reproduces assumption. This may feel uncomfortable because you want justice. You want fairness. But understand this clearly. The law is not personal. It is consistent. Just as gravity does not care whether you are kind or cruel, the creative law does not care whether you are modest or proud. It responds to state. You have perhaps noticed that fear seems to manifest as easily as hope. This is not coincidence. Fear is focused imagination charged with emotion. When you dwell in fear, you are not merely worrying, you are rehearsing. And rehearsal becomes experience. You say, I do not want this to happen. Yet you vividly imagine it happening. The law does not process the word not. It processes the image and the feeling attached to it. When you repeatedly imagine failure while saying you hope to succeed, the emotional rehearsal carries more weight than the verbal wish. The law is obedient to your inner conviction, not to your moral argument. You may argue that you deserve better, but if deep within you assume you are not chosen, life reflects that assumption. You may tell yourself that others are unfair, but if you assume that people cannot be trusted, You will meet evidence that confirms it. This is not punishment. It is obedience. Life is saying yes to what you persistently assume, and I want you to understand the power within that statement. If life is obedient, then you are not powerless. You are not at the mercy of random events. You are influencing events by what you consent to inwardly. You may have consented unconsciously to limitation for years. You may have agreed with thoughts of inadequacy. You may have accepted labels from childhood and carried them forward as identity. Each time you agreed inwardly, you authorized the reflection, but agreement can be withdrawn. Assumption can be revised. You are not bound to what you once believed about yourself. If you have believed I am not enough, life has echoed it. But if you begin to assume I am chosen, I am supported, I am capable, and you persist in that assumption until it feels natural, the law must obey that as well. The law does not say you are too late. The law does not say you are unworthy. The law says yes to the dominant state you occupy. So be careful what you rehearse. Be careful what you dwell upon. Be careful what you emotionally repeat. Because repetition becomes belief. Belief becomes identity. And identity becomes experience. This also means you must release the habit of blaming circumstances. Blame reinforces the idea that the cause is outside you. But the cause is always within you. When you accept this, you regain authority. Authority does not mean controlling others. Authority means choosing your assumption. It means deciding what you will agree with internally. It means refusing to rehearse defeat. If the law were moral in the way you imagined, it would limit you. But because it is obedient, it empowers you. It does not filter your request through judgment. It delivers according to conviction. So ask yourself honestly, what have you been consenting to about yourself? What story have you been agreeing with repeatedly? What label have you quietly accepted? Life is not testing you. It is echoing you. And the echo changes the moment the voice changes. You are not here to prove you are good enough. You are here to assume you already are. And when you assume it, not arrogantly but steadily, life reorganizes around that steady assumption. Remember this, the law is blind to morality but faithful to identity. It reflects the state you persist in. So choose your state consciously. Persist in it gently but firmly, and allow the obedience of life to work in your favor rather than against your unconscious habits. There is something I need you to see clearly now. You are not asking life for permission. You are issuing commands. Every assumption you accept about yourself is an order. Every feeling you repeatedly return to is a directive. And life responds with quiet precision by saying, "Yes, Master." You may not hear it, but it is constant. When you say nothing works for me, life says, "Yes, Master." When you say, "I am always overlooked," life says, "Yes, Master." When you say, "I am not enough," life says, "Yes, Master." It does not argue with you. It does not pause to evaluate whether you deserve something better. It simply reflects the identity you persist in feeling. You believed you were describing reality, but you were authorizing it. You believed you were reacting to circumstances, but you were commanding them through assumption. Every repeated thought charged with feeling becomes a decree, and the law, blind and obedient, executes it without question. I want you to feel the power in that, not as guilt, but as authority, because if life has been saying "Yes, Master" to your doubt, it will also say "Yes, Master" to your certainty. If it has been saying "Yes, Master" to your fear, it will say "Yes, Master" to your confidence. The obedience has never changed. Only your awareness has. You must begin to observe your inner speech as though it were a series of instructions being transmitted into form. When you say "This is too hard," you have issued a command. When you say "I never get opportunities," you have signed a silent contract. When you say "I always struggle," you have reinforced a pattern, and life has simply responded in alignment. But you are not trapped by what you once declared. You can withdraw consent from old assumptions. You can revise the order. Instead of saying "I hope this works," you can say "This is already unfolding in my favor." Instead of fearing failure, you can assume success as natural, not because you see evidence, but because you understand your role as the cause. You are not here to beg reality. You are here to define it. The problem has never been that life ignores you. The problem is that it obeys you too faithfully. Imagine that behind every sustained thought there is an unseen response. Yes, Master. Let that awareness slow you down. Let it make you more deliberate. You are not required to control every fleeting thought, but you are responsible for the thoughts you rehearse. Rehearsal becomes identity. Identity becomes instruction. Instruction becomes experience. Authority does not shout. Authority assumes. When you inwardly assume something as fact, calmly and steadily, you strengthen the command. Desperation weakens it. Certainty stabilizes it. You do not need to convince the universe. You need to decide within yourself. If you do not yet fully believe a new assumption, begin gently. Move from hopeless to possible, from possible to probable, from probable to inevitable. Each shift is a new command. Each sustained feeling is an authorization. Life does not filter your orders through moral judgment. It does not ask if you are worthy. It responds to what you consistently claim to be true about yourself. So become conscious of what you claim. Become careful with what you rehearse. Speak inwardly as someone who understands that they are heard at the level that truly creates. You are not powerless in a chaotic world. You are the source of the tone that world reflects. And when you finally accept that every repeated inner assumption is met with "Yes, Master," you will begin to choose your thoughts not from fear, but from authority. You will stop begging and start deciding. You will stop reacting and start defining. And life will continue to answer in the only way it knows how. Yes, Master, I want you to see yourself differently now, because most of your life you have lived as a thermometer when you were meant to be a thermostat. A thermometer only reacts. It measures the temperature of the room and adjusts itself accordingly. If the room is cold, it reads cold. If the room is hot, it reads hot. It has no authority. It reflects what already is. And this is how you have been living when you let circumstances determine how you feel. When money is low, you feel anxious. When someone praises you, you feel confident. When someone rejects you, you feel small. You have been measuring life instead of setting it. But a thermostat does something entirely different. A thermostat decides the temperature first. It does not ask the room for permission. It sets the standard, and the environment reorganizes around that decision. You were never meant to be emotional, whether reacting to external conditions. You were meant to be the one establishing the internal climate. Yet you have been looking at your bank account to decide whether you feel secure. You have been looking at messages on your phone to decide whether you feel loved. You have been looking at temporary results to decide whether you feel successful. That is thermometer consciousness. That is reactive living. And reactive living always keeps you one step behind your own power. When you wake up and check your circumstances before you choose your state, you surrender authorship. You allow yesterday's echo to dictate today's identity, but you are not here to read the temperature of reality. You are here to set it. If you want abundance, feel abundant before the numbers change. If you want love, feel chosen before confirmation appears. If you want stability, breathe as someone who is already secure. This is thermostat consciousness. I know what you may be thinking. You may say, how can I feel secure when the evidence says otherwise? But understand this clearly. Evidence is delayed feedback. Evidence reflects who you were, not who you are choosing to be now. If you keep adjusting your state to match old evidence, you will remain trapped in repetition. A thermostat does not lower its setting because the room is still cold. It holds the setting until the room warms. This requires inner discipline. It requires you to stop consulting appearances for emotional permission. It requires you to choose your state deliberately and remain in it even when nothing visibly shifts. When you decide, I am supported, you must remain supported inwardly, even when temporary challenges arise. When you decide, I am prosperous, you must remain prosperous inwardly, even when bills appear. That steadiness is what creates change. You have been trained to believe that emotions are reactions, but emotions can also be decisions. You can decide to remain calm in uncertainty. You can decide to remain grateful in transition. You can decide to remain confident in delay. When you do this, you are no longer measuring life. You are shaping it. Think about how often you allow news, Conversations, social media, or other people's moods to set your internal temperature. You walk into a room and absorb tension. You hear bad news and collapse inwardly. You read something negative and carry it for hours. That is unconscious thermostat surrender. You are allowing external noise to program your internal climate. And then you wonder why your life feels unstable. A thermostat does not argue with the cold air. It simply maintains its setting. In the same way, you do not need to fight circumstances. You only need to remain established in your chosen state. When fear arises, do not panic. Simply return to the setting. When doubt appears, do not negotiate with it. Return to the setting. When delay tempts you to revert to anxiety, return to the setting. This is not denial. It is authorship. You are not pretending that the room is warm. You are deciding that warmth is the new standard. And because reality reflects sustained inner climate, it must eventually conform. At first it may feel unnatural. You may feel like you are acting. But remember, every identity once felt unfamiliar. Confidence felt unnatural before it became natural. Stability felt unnatural before it became stable. What you practice emotionally becomes your baseline, and your baseline determines your outcomes. Stop checking the temperature every hour. Stop asking, is it working yet? Stop scanning for signs. These habits pull you back into thermometer mode. Instead, ask, who am I choosing to be today? Set the temperature. Hold it calmly. Let the room adjust. When you move from thermometer to thermostat, you stop being pushed around by life. You stop interpreting every fluctuation as proof of failure. You understand that external change lags behind internal decision. And because you understand that, you remain steady. You are not here to measure reality. You are here to define it. You are not here to react to the world. You are here to determine the tone the world must reflect. And when you finally accept that you are the thermostat of your own experience, you will stop waiting for permission to feel powerful. You will simply decide, and reality will gradually match your decision. Now that you understand you are broadcasting constantly, I want to show you how to deliberately adjust the signal, not through force, not through pretending, but through practical shifts that realign your state. Because awareness alone is not enough. You must practice alignment until it becomes natural. The first tool is posture and breath, because your body is the fastest gateway to state change. If you are anxious, your breath becomes shallow and your shoulders collapse. If you are confident, your breath deepens and your spine rises. So instead of trying to fight anxious thoughts directly, change the breath, slow it down, lengthen the exhale, relax your jaw, lift your chest gently. The body will inform the mind that safety is present. When safety is present, creativity replaces survival. You cannot broadcast abundance from a nervous system that believes it is under threat. Calm the body and the signal stabilizes. The second tool is what I call signal diet. Just as you are careful with what you feed your body, you must become careful with what you feed your consciousness. If you constantly consume fear, comparison, outrage, and limitation, your state adjusts accordingly. You may believe you are only observing information, but your nervous system is absorbing tone. If you repeatedly expose yourself to narratives of scarcity, you begin to feel scarcity as normal, and what feels normal becomes your broadcast. So reduce exposure to what lowers your state. Protect your mornings especially. Before you check messages, before you read news, set your internal climate. Choose your feeling first, then interact with the world. Do not allow random input to program your baseline. The third tool is mental rehearsal from the end. Do not imagine the process of getting what you want. Imagine the feeling of already having it. Sit quietly and ask yourself, if this were already resolved, how would I feel? Let the answer be emotional, not analytical. Would you feel relief, gratitude, confidence, peace? Now allow your body to experience that feeling as though it is present. This is not fantasy. This is conditioning. The brain does not clearly distinguish between vividly imagined experience and physical experience when emotion is involved. When you repeatedly feel the end state, you make it familiar, and what is familiar feels natural, and what feels natural manifests more easily. The fourth tool is emotional auditing. Throughout the day, pause and ask yourself, what am I broadcasting right now? Not in judgment, but in awareness. If you notice irritation, ask what assumption is underneath it. If you notice fear, ask what identity you are rehearsing. Awareness interrupts automatic repetition. Once you see a pattern clearly, you can choose differently. Replace the state deliberately. Shift from worry to expectation. Shift from resentment to detachment. Shift from urgency to calm certainty. Each shift is a signal adjustment. Another powerful tool is indifference toward temporary appearances. When something happens that contradicts your desired state, resist the impulse to emotionally react. Reaction reinforces the old broadcast. Instead, acknowledge it calmly and return to your chosen assumption. This is not denial. It is discipline. You are choosing not to let a single moment override your sustained state. The outer world is delayed feedback. It does not deserve authority over your identity. Gratitude remains one of the most precise signal adjustments available to you. Not gratitude for what is visible only, but gratitude for what is forming. When you thank life inwardly as though something is already arranged, you move from seeking to possessing. Gratitude collapses distance. It trains your nervous system to feel completion. And completion is magnetic. Consistency matters more than intensity. A brief surge of inspiration will not override years of unconscious conditioning, but small, repeated adjustments accumulate. If you adjust your breath several times a day, protect your input consistently, rehearse the end state nightly, and audit your emotions regularly, your baseline will shift. And when your baseline shifts, outcomes follow. You must also release obsession with immediate proof. When you change the signal, allow time for reorganization. Do not dig up the seed daily to check its growth. Maintain the frequency and trust the law. The more relaxed you are about timing, the cleaner your broadcast becomes. Urgency introduces distortion. Calm expectation maintains clarity. Remember that you are not trying to manipulate reality. You are aligning with the version of yourself who already experiences what you desire. The tools are not tricks. They are reminders. They bring your body, mind, and feeling into coherence. And coherence strengthens manifestation. You are always broadcasting. The only question is whether you are doing it consciously. So use these tools gently but persistently. Adjust your posture. Regulate your breath. Guard your input. Rehearse the fulfilled state. Audit your emotions. Remain indifferent to temporary contradictions. Practice gratitude beyond evidence. And, most importantly, repeat. Because when the signal becomes stable, reality has no option but to mirror it. Now I want you to step into a deeper level of authorship. Because it is not enough to adjust your signal quietly. You must also understand the posture from which you relate to life. Most people approach reality as petitioners. They ask timidly. They hope cautiously. They negotiate internally. They say, please let this work. Please let this happen. Please do not let this fail. But that posture carries uncertainty, and uncertainty weakens command. You were not meant to approach life as a beggar. You were meant to approach it as a sovereign, not arrogant, not forceful, but certain. There is a difference between desperation and authority. Desperation asks if it is allowed. Authority assumes it is done. Think of a king. When a king speaks within his own kingdom, he does not plead with the walls. He does not ask the throne for approval. E declares, and the declaration is accepted as structure. In the same way, when you assume something inwardly with calm certainty, you are not requesting permission from the universe. You are defining the standard it must reflect. This is the language of I am. Not I hope to be, not I wish I were, but I am. You must become careful with how you use those words internally. When you say I am unlucky, you are wearing a crown of limitation. When you say I am overlooked, you are issuing a decree of invisibility. When you say I am not good enough, you are binding yourself to smallness. But when you say I am supported, I am chosen. I am capable. And you allow yourself to feel it as truth. You speak from the throne of your own consciousness. Authority does not shout. It does not need drama. It is quiet and stable. It does not panic at delay. It does not collapse at contradiction. It does not check constantly for approval. It assumes the end and remains there. This is the posture you must cultivate. Not aggressive, not rigid, but composed and settled. Many people confuse authority with arrogance. Arrogance tries to prove itself. Authority does not. Arrogance demands validation from others. Authority does not depend on external agreement. Authority is internal alignment. It is the calm knowing that what you assume within must eventually appear without. You may have spent years approaching life cautiously, afraid to expect too much, afraid to assume boldly, afraid to be disappointed. But cautious expectation produces cautious results. If you speak inwardly with hesitation, life mirrors hesitation. If you speak inwardly with quiet command, life organizes around that command. I want you to notice how your inner language sounds when you think about your desires. Do you say, maybe it will happen? I hope it works out. I will try. Or do you say, this is unfolding? This is mine. This is natural for me. The difference may seem subtle, but the emotional tone is entirely different. One carries doubt. The other carries establishment. Establishment is powerful. When something feels established in you, you no longer chase it. You no longer worry about losing it. You rest in it. That rest is the mark of sovereignty. You are not here to beg reality to cooperate. You are here to declare who you are and allow reality to conform. But understand this clearly. Commanding does not mean controlling other people. You are not here to dominate others. You are here to define your own state. The only territory you rule is your consciousness. And when you rule it well, the reflection aligns. So when doubt arises, do not negotiate with it endlessly. A king does not debate every whisper in the court. He decides, when fear appears, acknowledge it, then return to your assumption. When delay tests your patience, remain steady. Authority remains steady. Each morning, before the world speaks to you, speak to yourself. Establish your identity before circumstances attempt to define it. Say inwardly who you are. Say what is true about you, not as wishful thinking, but as present reality. Let your body feel it. Let your breath align with it. Let your posture carry it. You are not here to wait for confidence. You are here to assume it. You are not here to wait for permission to feel powerful. You are here to recognize that you already possess creative authority. The law responds to conviction, not to pleading. So speak inwardly from the throne, not from the floor. Assume the best as natural, not as raw. Stand in your chosen identity calmly, not defensively. And when appearances seem slow to change, do not retreat into uncertainty. Remain composed. Remain decided. Because when you consistently inhabit the posture of command, life responds with structure. It reflects your steadiness. It arranges itself around your assumption, and you will begin to notice something subtle yet undeniable. Circumstances no longer feel random. They begin to feel responsive. You are not small in this world. You are the center from which your experience radiates. So stop whispering to life. Speak inwardly with clarity. Stand inwardly with certainty. And allow the language of your assumption to become the architecture of your days. Now I want you to understand something that separates those who merely hope from those who truly create. And that is certainty. Not loud certainty. Not forced certainty, but quiet, unwavering certainty. Hope still contains doubt. Hope still waits for permission. Certainty does not wait. Certainty rests. When you are certain about something, you do not obsess over it. You do not constantly check for proof. You do not negotiate with it. You move as though it is settled, and that settled feeling is power. Think about something in your life that you are completely certain about. Perhaps your name. Perhaps where you live. Perhaps that the sun will rise tomorrow. You do not rehearse it anxiously. You do not affirm it repeatedly. You do not fear losing it randomly. You simply know. That knowing is calm. That knowing is stable. That knowing carries no tension. This is the state you must cultivate regarding your desired reality. Many people attempt to manifest while secretly doubting. They imagine the outcome, then immediately question whether it is realistic. They feel inspired briefly, then return to skepticism. That oscillation weakens the signal. Certainty stabilizes it. Certainty is not intensity. It is consistency. It is the refusal to emotionally retreat when appearances are slow to shift. You may ask, how can I be certain without evidence? But understand this carefully. Evidence follows certainty. Evidence does not produce it. If you require proof before you feel secure, you remain dependent on the outer world. But when you choose certainty first, the outer world reorganizes to reflect that stability. Certainty feels like ordering something and trusting it will arrive. You do not call the store every hour. You do not panic about whether the delivery exists. You assume completion. That assumption removes urgency. Urgency often signals doubt. Calm expectation signals belief. You have been trained to believe that confidence must be earned. But confidence can also be assumed. When you assume something long enough, your nervous system adapts to it. What once felt unnatural becomes neutral. What becomes neutral becomes your baseline. And your baseline determines your experience. If you constantly say, what if it fails, you weaken your state. If you constantly ask, is it working, you reinforce uncertainty. Instead, ask yourself, who would I be if this were already resolved? Then become that version inwardly, not dramatically, not performatively, but quietly. Certainty does not shout. It does not demand validation. It does not attempt to convince others. It is internally settled. And when you are settled, you stop chasing signs. You stop scanning for reassurance. You stop fluctuating emotionally with each temporary circumstance. There will be moments when old doubt tries to return. That is natural. But you must decide which voice you will sustain. Doubt only gains power when repeated. Certainty gains power through repetition as well. Each time you choose the stable assumption instead of the fearful one, you strengthen your inner ground. Certainty also changes your behavior subtly. When you are certain, you move differently. You speak differently. You hesitate less. You stop apologizing for your presence. Others feel this, not because you announce it, but because you embody it. The body aligns with belief. The tone aligns with conviction. The eyes align with expectation. And understand this clearly. Certainty is not arrogance. Arrogance tries to prove superiority. Certainty does not need comparison. Certainty is simply alignment between thought, feeling, and identity. It is inner coherence. You must stop practicing uncertainty as a habit. You must stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios as entertainment. Every rehearsal strengthens a state. If you rehearse failure repeatedly, you grow comfortable with it. If you rehearse success calmly, you grow comfortable with that instead. Comfort determines manifestation. What you are comfortable receiving. You allow what feels foreign. You resist unconsciously. So make your desired outcome familiar. Feel it nightly. Rest in it mentally. Speak of it inwardly as already arranged. Not obsessively, but naturally. You do not need constant affirmation once certainty is established. Once you know. The repetition is only required until the knowing feels stable. After that, you live from it effortlessly. Stop looking outward for confirmation of your worth, your potential, your future. Decide inwardly. Decide once, and then remain consistent with that decision, even when temporary evidence suggests otherwise. Remain composed. Certainty transforms delay into patience. Certainty transforms obstacles into transitions. Certainty removes emotional volatility, and volatility weakens manifestation. So ask yourself now, where have I been practicing doubt? Where have I been oscillating between belief and fear? Then choose differently. Choose steadiness. Choose internal agreement. Choose to be settled before circumstances demand it. Because when you are certain, life responds accordingly, not because you forced it, but because you stabilized the signal, and a stabilized signal becomes reality. Now I want to bring you back to something subtle but powerful. Because even after understanding certainty, many still sabotage themselves through need. Need feels intense. It feels passionate. It feels urgent. But urgency is often fear wearing the mask of desire. When you say, "I need this to happen," you are unconsciously declaring that without it, you are incomplete. And the moment you accept incompleteness as your identity, you broadcast lack. Lack then mirrors itself. You may believe that strong desire accelerates manifestation, but desperate attachment distorts it. When you cling to an outcome, you tighten emotionally. That tightening communicates absence. It says, "This is not here yet, and I cannot rest until it is." That restlessness becomes your state, and your state is what manifests. I want you to observe your body when you feel need. Notice the contraction in your chest. Notice the restless thoughts. Notice the constant checking for signs. Need makes you measure constantly. It makes you analyze every message, every delay, every detail. That measuring reinforces separation. It keeps the desire outside you. There is nothing wrong with wanting something. Desire is natural. Desire is creative. But need transforms desire into dependency, and dependency places your emotional stability in the hands of circumstance. When your peace depends on an outcome, you have surrendered authorship. You must learn the difference between preference and need. Preference says, "I would love this, but I remain whole regardless." Need says, "I cannot be whole until this arrives." Preference carries openness. Need carries pressure. Pressure distorts your signal. Imagine trying to hold water tightly in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more it escapes. But when you cup your hands gently, it remains. Manifestation works similarly. When you grip too tightly, you communicate fear of loss. Fear of loss strengthens the experience of loss. Often what you chase desperately continues to elude you, not because you are unworthy, but because your state says, "I am missing something." The law reflects that missing. It continues to confirm the identity of someone waiting. Let me ask you honestly, how many times have you said, "I just need this job. I just need this relationship. I just need this breakthrough," and felt anxiety beneath the words? That anxiety is not neutral. It is instructive. It signals that you believe something essential is outside you. The shift happens when you recognize that nothing external completes you. You do not manifest to become whole. You manifest because you are whole. Wholeness attracts. Incompleteness chases. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You move from "I need this" to "I prefer this." That subtle shift changes everything. "I prefer" carries lightness. It allows space. It removes desperation. And when desperation dissolves, resistance weakens. If you truly believed something was already secured for you, you would not panic over its timing. You would not fear losing it before it appears. You would not obsess over every delay. You would remain calm. That calm is alignment. Need often disguises itself as motivation, but motivation driven by fear creates tension. Tension clouds clarity. Clarity supports creation. When you release the idea that your happiness depends on one specific outcome, you become emotionally free, and emotional freedom is attractive. There is also another hidden layer. Need often carries the fear of not being chosen. When you need a person to validate you, you silently believe you are not inherently worthy. When you need success to prove yourself, you silently believe you are insufficient. Those silent beliefs are the true signal. So instead of feeding the need, address the belief. Remind yourself, "I am already enough. I am already whole. This outcome enhances my life, but it does not define me." When you stabilize in that state, the outcome can arrive without resistance. Let go of the pedestal. Stop placing your desire above your peace. Your peace must come first. Your wholeness must come first. When your inner state is steady, the external flows more naturally. You may fear that if you release need, you will lose desire. But the opposite is true. When you release need, desire becomes cleaner. It becomes joyful rather than anxious. It becomes creative rather than desperate. Ask yourself now, where have I been gripping? Where have I been measuring? Where have I been saying I cannot relax until this happens? then gently loosen the grip. Return to calm certainty. Return to gratitude. Return to the assumption that what is aligned with you cannot miss you. You are not meant to live in tension. You are meant to live in alignment. And alignment requires release. When you stop needing, you start receiving. When you stop chasing, you start embodying. Remember this clearly. You attract from wholeness, not from hunger. Hunger can inspire movement, but sustained hunger becomes scarcity. Choose sufficiency instead. Choose calm preference. Choose inner completeness, because the moment you no longer need something to feel complete, you become the version of yourself who can naturally receive it. Now I want you to understand that mild change will not produce radical transformation. If you keep negotiating with your old identity, you will keep reproducing it. Radical assumption means you stop asking whether the new version of you is realistic, and you begin inhabiting it as final. You do not gently adjust the old self. You replace it. The old identity survives only because you keep revisiting it emotionally. Every time you say, "This is just how I am," you reinforce a structure. Radical assumption requires that you withdraw loyalty from that structure completely. You have carried a story about yourself for years. Perhaps the story says you are shy, unlucky, overlooked, inconsistent, anxious, not chosen, not enough. You may not say it out loud, but you have repeated it internally. That repetition has solidified into personality. Personality then feels permanent, but personality is only practiced identity, and what has been practiced can be unpracticed. Radical assumption begins when you decide that the old narrative is no longer authorized, not slowly phased out, not occasionally doubted, terminated. When you catch yourself repeating the old label, you do not analyze it endlessly. You replace it immediately. You do not argue with the old self. You stop feeding it attention. This is what I mean by killing the old ego. Not destroying yourself, but dissolving the false identity you have mistaken for self. The ego you must release is the version of you built from past evidence. It is the accumulation of memories, failures, embarrassments, and limitations that you accepted as definition. Radical assumption says that past evidence has no authority over present identity. You may feel resistance when you attempt this. The mind will say, "But this is not who I have been." That is correct. You are not trying to continue who you have been. You are choosing who you are becoming. Becoming requires rupture. It requires that you disappoint your past expectations. Most people attempt change while secretly preserving the old self as backup. They say, "I am becoming confident, but if this fails, I will return to being cautious." They say, "I am abundant, but if money does not increase soon, I will return to fear." That conditional approach weakens transformation. Radical assumption has no backup plan. It burns the bridge behind it. When you assume radically, you do not wait for permission from your environment. You do not ask your friends to confirm the new version. You do not look at your bank account to validate abundance. You declare inwardly who you are, and you remain loyal to that declaration even when circumstances look unchanged. This is uncomfortable at first because the old ego seeks familiarity. It whispers, "Remember who you are." But you must answer that whisper with clarity. I am no longer that version. I release it. I do not rehearse it. I do not identify with it. I choose differently now. Every time you revisit the old story emotionally, you resurrect it. Every time you defend your limitation, you reinforce it. So stop defending it. Stop explaining it. Stop narrating it. Silence is powerful here. Let the old identity starve. Radical assumption also requires emotional discipline. If something happens that resembles your past pattern, do not say, "See, this is who I am." Instead say, "This is the final echo of an expired identity." Remain steady in the new assumption. Do not emotionally return to the past just because it briefly reappears. You must become more committed to your chosen identity than to your comfort. Comfort lies in familiarity. Power lies in decision. When you decide, "I am now this version," you stop negotiating with doubt. You stop reintroducing the old self through conversation. You stop bonding with others over shared limitation. This does not mean pretending to be someone you are not. It means recognizing that who you have been is not fixed truth. Identity is fluid until stabilized. Radical assumption stabilizes the new self through repetition and emotional loyalty. Ask yourself honestly, who have I been protecting? Have you been protecting the wounded version of you? The cautious version? The underestimated version? Perhaps you believe that releasing it would mean betraying your history. But your history does not require your loyalty. Your future does. To kill the old ego is to stop rehearsing its emotional patterns. It is to stop introducing yourself to the world through past pain. It is to stop explaining your behavior through old wounds. It is to say that version served its time, and now it is dismissed. When you assume radically, you simplify your life. You no longer debate who you are. You decide, and then you behave consistently with that decision, not aggressively, but steadily, not loudly, but persistently. Over time, something shifts. The new identity stops feeling like effort. It becomes neutral. It becomes natural. And when it becomes natural, manifestation accelerates because resistance dissolves. You are not here to slightly upgrade your limitations. You are here to transcend them. Radical assumption is not gradual self-improvement. It is identity replacement. So choose carefully who you now are. Declare it inwardly. Feel it physically. Remain loyal to it emotionally. And let the old ego fade from lack of attention. Because the version of you that you consistently assume is the version reality must confirm. Now I want you to understand that identity is not discovered. It is engineered. You were not born with a fixed personality carved in stone. You were conditioned into patterns through repetition, emotion, and environment. What you call yourself today is the result of accumulated rehearsal. And if identity was built through rehearsal, it can be rebuilt through deliberate design. Engineering identity means you stop asking, who am I, and you start deciding who I am becoming. You have been operating from inherited scripts. Scripts from childhood. Scripts from past failures. Scripts from what others said about you. Over time, you accepted those scripts as truth. You repeated them emotionally. You behaved consistently with them. And repetition created identity. Identity then created outcomes. But now you are no longer unconscious. Now you can intervene in the process. Engineering identity begins with clarity, not vague desire, not general improvement, but precise definition. Who is the version of you that already lives the life you want? How does that version think? How does that version respond to stress? How does that version handle money, relationships, opportunity? Do not focus first on what they have. Focus on who they are, because what they have is the consequence of who they are being consistently. If you want different results, you must construct a different baseline self. This is not imitation of someone else. This is conscious authorship of yourself. Next comes emotional alignment. It is not enough to describe the new identity intellectually. You must feel. You must rehearse it. Sit quietly and imagine yourself already stabilized in that identity. Notice how your body feels. Notice how your breath shifts. Notice the absence of certain fears. That emotional rehearsal begins to lay neurological tracks. The brain adapts to repeated internal experience. What you feel repeatedly becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes normal. And what becomes normal becomes you. Engineering identity also requires behavioral congruence. If you assume abundance but continue behaving in chronic fear, you create internal conflict. So take small actions that align with the new identity, not dramatic gestures, but consistent signals. If you are engineering confidence, speak slightly more directly. If you are engineering discipline, keep small promises to yourself daily. If you are engineering calm authority, slow your reactions. These behaviors reinforce the emotional state. Over time, identity solidifies through consistency. The key is repetition without contradiction. Many people attempt to engineer identity but abandon it at the first discomfort. Discomfort is not failure. Discomfort is the friction between old neural patterns and new ones. Stay through the friction. You must also eliminate identity leaks. Identity leaks are moments where you revert to the old self through conversation or thought. When you say, "I am just bad with money," you reinforce that script. When you joke about your inconsistency, you cement it. Stop rehearsing the old narrative socially. Speak in alignment with who you are building. Engineering identity is a process of internal design followed by external reinforcement. You decide the structure. You feel it repeatedly. You behave congruently. You protect it from contradiction. And gradually, it stabilizes. There is a powerful shift that occurs when identity becomes self-reinforcing. At first, you must consciously choose responses. Later, those responses become automatic. The new identity no longer feels forced. It feels obvious. That is when manifestation accelerates because resistance has dissolved. Do not confuse identity engineering with fake performance. Performance seeks validation. Engineering seeks internal coherence. You are not trying to impress others. You are aligning your inner and outer expression so that there is no split. The world responds to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors align around a defined identity, your signal becomes strong. Strong signals produce consistent reflections. Weak and conflicted signals produce delay. Ask yourself, what identity have I been unconsciously engineering through repetition? Have you engineered doubt through constant worry? Have you engineered scarcity through habitual fear? Have you engineered rejection through persistent insecurity? If so, understand that this was not destiny. It was design without awareness. Now you design with awareness. Choose the blueprint. Reinforce it daily. Protect it from old narratives. Allow time for stabilization. Do not expect instant transformation, but expect inevitable transformation if you remain consistent. Identity is the root system beneath visible results. Change the root, and the branches must follow. You cannot remain the same person and expect a radically different life, but you can become someone new deliberately. You are not stuck with who you have been. You are not defined by past evidence. You are the architect of your own internal structure, and once you engineer identity with intention, reality reorganizes around the design. Now I want you to look at something that has been quietly trapping you for years. Your belief in the present moment as fixed reality. You wake up, you look around, you check your circumstances, and you conclude, this is my life right now. But what you call the present is not a neutral snapshot. It is accumulated momentum. It is yesterday's assumptions hardened into form. And because you mistake it for final truth, you keep reacting to it instead of redefining it. You think you are responding to now, but now is already delayed. The conditions you see are the echo of past identity. The bank balance you observe reflects previous states. The relationship dynamic you experience reflects former assumptions. The emotional patterns you notice reflect earlier rehearsals, yet you treat them as authority. You say, this is how it is. And by saying that, you reinforce it. This is the time trap. You believe the present defines you, when in fact the present reveals who you have been. If you continue letting what is visible determine how you feel, you remain locked in repetition. You wake up into yesterday and recreate it emotionally, which guarantees tomorrow will resemble today. I want you to understand this clearly. The moment you emotionally react to current conditions, you fuse yourself to them. If money looks tight and you feel fear, you strengthen the identity of scarcity. If someone behaves coldly and you feel rejected, you reinforce abandonment. If progress looks slow and you feel doubt, you anchor delay. Reaction binds you to the past, but you are not meant to measure the present. You are meant to transcend it. The present is not a prison unless you emotionally agree with it. You must learn to see circumstances as outdated reflections. They are information, not identity. Ask yourself honestly how often you have said, this is just how things are. Each time you say that, you surrender authorship. You treat temporary evidence as permanent truth, but nothing in your outer world is permanent unless you continuously energize it with feeling. The time trap convinces you that change requires waiting. It whispers that transformation will happen later when conditions improve. But transformation begins when identity shifts, not when evidence changes. If you wait for proof before you assume the new self, you remain dependent on the old. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. If you want a different reflection, you do not argue with the mirror. You adjust yourself. Yet with life, You keep arguing with reflections. You complain about what you see while continuing to hold the same internal posture. That is the illusion. The present is not a command. It is feedback. Feedback only has power if you treat it as verdict. Instead of asking, why is this happening? Ask, who was I being when this was set in motion? That question returns authority to you. You must detach emotionally from current appearances without denying them. Acknowledge what you see, but refuse to let it define who you are becoming. When something looks unchanged, say this is the last echo of an old state. When something appears delayed, say reorganization is underway. Not as blind optimism, but as conscious refusal to anchor into outdated identity. Time itself becomes less threatening when you understand this. You are not moving forward into new reality. Reality is reorganizing around the identity you now choose. The only reason change appears slow is because you keep revisiting the old version emotionally. The time trap also manifests as regret. You look back and think, if only I had known this earlier. But regret is another attachment to past identity. The moment you shift now, the trajectory changes. The past does not control you unless you emotionally relive it repeatedly. You are not here to fight the present. You are here to outgrow it. The present is a lagging indicator, not a prophecy. If you stop reacting to it and instead remain loyal to your new assumption, something subtle shifts. The emotional charge tied to current conditions weakens. They lose their grip on you. Over time, as you consistently refuse to let the visible define the invisible, the visible begins to rearrange, not instantly, not dramatically at first, but steadily, because you are no longer reinforcing the old pattern through reaction. The illusion of the present dissolves when you realize that what you see is not who you are. Who you are is what you assume persistently, and assumption precedes evidence. So stop treating now as destiny. Stop measuring your potential by today's conditions. Stop asking circumstances for permission to feel secure, powerful, chosen. Instead, decide inwardly who you are regardless of what appears. Remain there. Do not emotionally surrender to temporary form. Let the past fade without reinforcement, because the present only traps you if you believe it defines you. And the moment you withdraw that belief, time loses its power over your identity. Now I want you to understand gratitude at a level most people never reach. Not as reaction, but as prevention. Not as response after receiving, but as payment before arrival. Most people wait for something good to happen and then they feel grateful. They treat gratitude as a receipt, but real creative gratitude functions as investment. It is emotional currency paid in advance. When you feel grateful before evidence, you are declaring completion ahead of time. Think about how different that is from hope. Hope waits. Gratitude assumes. Hope says maybe. Gratitude says thank you, as though it is already secured. That shift changes your entire nervous system. When you say thank you for something unseen, your body relaxes. It interprets the situation as resolved, and a relaxed body broadcasts completion. You have been trained to believe that gratitude must follow proof, but proof is delayed reflection. If you wait for proof before you feel appreciation, you remain emotionally tied to the current state. But when you express gratitude before results, you detach from present limitation and align with future identity. Gratitude paid in advance eliminates anxiety. Anxiety asks, when will it happen? Gratitude says it is already arranged. Anxiety scans for signs. Gratitude rests in trust. When you truly feel thankful for something that has not yet appeared physically, you move into possession energetically. This is not pretending. It is alignment. If you ordered something online and fully trusted the delivery, you would already feel relief. You would already feel completion even before it arrives. That relief is preemptive gratitude. It stabilizes expectation. Preventive gratitude also neutralizes fear. When you are grateful for the solution before the problem resolves, you weaken the emotional charge of the problem. You stop feeding it urgency. You stop identifying with struggle. Instead, you identify with support. Imagine waking up each morning and instead of scanning for what is missing, you say thank you that everything is aligning. Thank you that the right opportunities are forming. Thank you that the right people are moving toward me. Thank you that clarity is increasing. Feel it sincerely. Let your body register the sense of arrival. When you do this consistently, something shifts internally. You no longer chase outcomes desperately. You no longer need constant reassurance. Gratitude stabilizes certainty. It prevents emotional volatility. Most people practice reactive gratitude. They say thank you after they receive money, after they receive love, after they receive recognition. But that gratitude only acknowledges what already exists. Preventive gratitude shapes what will exist. It is like planting seeds and thanking the harvest before it sprouts. You are not denying the current soil. You are declaring confidence in growth. That confidence changes how you behave. You water consistently. You stop digging up the seed to check it. You remain steady. There is also a psychological effect. When you repeatedly feel grateful in advance, your brain begins searching for evidence to justify the emotion. It scans for alignment. It notices opportunities it previously ignored. Gratitude sharpens perception toward abundance. You must be careful here. Do not rush through gratitude mechanically. It must be felt, even if you begin small, even if you begin with subtle appreciation. Allow the emotion to register. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders soften. Let your chest expand. That physical response is part of the signal. Preventive gratitude also dissolves need. When you say thank you as though something is already yours, you cannot simultaneously cling to it anxiously. Gratitude and desperation cannot occupy the same emotional space. One relaxes, the other contracts. If something delays, instead of panicking, return to gratitude. Say thank you that timing is working in my favor. Thank you that unseen coordination is happening. Thank you that this is moving even if I cannot see it yet. That repetition prevents doubt from solidifying. You are not lying to yourself. You are choosing your state before circumstances attempt to dictate it. Gratitude paid in advance becomes emotional insurance. It protects you from falling back into fear. Over time, this practice becomes natural. You begin to feel thankful not only for visible blessings but for unfolding possibilities. You stop living in reaction. You start living in expectation without tension. Ask yourself now, have I been waiting to feel grateful? Have I been postponing appreciation until proof appears? If so, reverse it. Thank life before it confirms you. Thank your future before it manifests. Thank the solution before it shows. Because when you consistently pay gratitude in advance, you stabilize the identity of someone who receives, and reality reflects that identity faithfully. Now I want you to face something uncomfortable but necessary, because even when you understand the law, even when you practice gratitude, even when you engineer identity, there is often a quiet force inside you that resists change. I call it the saboteur, not an enemy from outside, but a pattern within. It is the voice that whispers this will not last. It is the impulse that returns you to old habits just when progress begins. It is the subtle doubt that surfaces the moment things start to improve. You may think the world blocks you, but often it is this internal saboteur preserving familiarity. Familiarity feels safe even when it is limiting. Your nervous system prefers what it knows over what is unknown. So when you begin to shift identity, when you begin to assume abundance, confidence, love, something inside may feel unsettled. That unsettled feeling is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that you are expanding. The saboteur operates through repetition of old stories. It reminds you of past failures. It highlights past embarrassments. It replays old evidence as proof that you should not expect more. It tells you not to hope too much so you will not be disappointed. It calls itself realism, but realism built from outdated identity is limitation disguised as caution. You must understand that the saboteur is not evil. It was created to protect you. At some point in your life, shrinking may have prevented rejection. Doubting yourself may have reduced risk. Playing small may have avoided conflict. Those patterns once felt useful, but what once protected you now restricts you. When you attempt to assume a new identity, the saboteur fears instability. It says, who do you think you are? It says this is not consistent with your past. It says stay where it is predictable. And if you listen repeatedly, you return to your old baseline. Notice how sabotage often appears just before breakthrough. You procrastinate when opportunity arises. You argue when intimacy deepens. You doubt when progress accelerates. These are not coincidences. They are attempts by the old identity to reassert control. The key is awareness without condemnation. If you attack yourself for sabotaging, you create another layer of conflict. Instead, observe it calmly. Say, I see this pattern. I understand why it formed, but I no longer need it. The saboteur feeds on unconscious repetition. When you bring it into conscious light, it weakens. Each time you notice the impulse to retreat and choose expansion instead, you rewire identity. You must also challenge the belief that you are the saboteur. You are not the voice of doubt. You are the awareness observing it. When a thought arises that says, "This will fail," pause and recognize it as a conditioned reflex, not truth. Do not argue endlessly. Do not debate internally for hours. Simply return to your chosen assumption. There will be moments where you feel tempted to prove the saboteur right, to say, "See, I knew this would not work." That temptation is familiar comfort, but comfort built from limitation is expensive. It costs you potential. When you remain steady despite the internal whisper, something shifts. The saboteur loses authority. It may still appear occasionally, but it no longer dictates behavior. Over time, the intensity decreases because you stop reinforcing it. You must replace sabotage with self-leadership. Instead of reacting automatically, respond deliberately. Instead of withdrawing at the first sign of discomfort, stay present. Instead of rehearsing worst-case scenarios, rehearse alignment. Ask yourself honestly, where have I been interrupting my own growth? Where have I been retreating into old habits when new identity felt too big? Awareness is the first step. Discipline is the second. Consistency is the third. Understand that sabotage often emerges from fear of visibility. If you become successful, you will be seen. If you become confident, you may outgrow relationships. If you become abundant, expectations may rise. The saboteur prefers invisibility over exposure, but invisibility also limits fulfillment. You cannot expand and remain hidden simultaneously. At some point, you must choose growth over comfort. Each time you choose alignment over retreat, you weaken the old pattern. Each time you act as the new identity despite discomfort, you reinforce it. Identity solidifies through repetition, not through intention alone. Do not expect the saboteur to vanish instantly. Expect it to fade as you consistently refuse to obey it. Your job is not to eliminate doubt forever. Your job is to stop building your life around it. Remember this clearly. The saboteur is a memory of who you were, not a prophecy of who you are becoming. It only has power if you treat it as authority. So the next time it whispers limitation, listen calmly, acknowledge it, and then move anyway. Choose expansion. Choose alignment. Choose the version of you that does not retreat, because the only force truly blocking you is the identity you continue to rehearse. And the moment you stop rehearsing it, it begins to dissolve. Now, I want you to understand a principle that explains why inconsistency produces frustration and why alignment produces acceleration. I call it the boomerang law. Whatever you project consistently returns, not sometimes, not selectively, but according to the emotional tone you sustain. If you project trust, trust circles back. If you project suspicion, suspicion returns. If you project self-respect, respect mirrors you. If you project doubt, doubt finds its way back. You may believe life is random, but look closely at your recurring patterns. Notice how similar themes repeat, the same types of disappointments, the same relational dynamics, the same financial cycles, the same emotional triggers. This is not punishment. It is echo. The boomerang does not decide what to bring back. It returns what you threw. Consistency is the key. A single positive thought will not override a dominant pattern. A brief surge of confidence will not neutralize years of insecurity. The boomerang responds to sustained direction. It responds to what you habitually send out through identity. When your internal world contradicts itself, The return becomes delayed and confusing. If you say I am abundant but constantly fear loss, you throw mixed signals. The boomerang spins unpredictably because the projection lacks coherence. Coherence strengthens return. Fragmentation weakens it. You must look at the subtle projections you send daily. When you expect people to disappoint you, you treat them cautiously. That caution influences your tone. Your tone influences their response. Their response confirms your expectation. The boomerang completes its arc. When you assume rejection, you behave guarded. Guarded behavior limits intimacy. Limited intimacy confirms rejection. The cycle appears external, but it begins internally. The same applies to opportunity. If you assume scarcity, you hesitate. If you hesitate, you delay action. Delayed action reduces results. Reduced results confirm scarcity. The boomerang returns exactly what you projected emotionally. This law is not mystical. It is relational. Your identity influences perception. Perception influences behavior. Behavior influences outcome. Outcome reinforces identity. That loop continues until you interrupt it consciously. Unity is essential here. If you want a new return, your thought, feeling, and behavior must align. If you claim confidence but secretly rehearse failure, the signal splits. If you speak abundance but act from fear, the boomerang receives conflicting instructions. You must decide what you are projecting and remain loyal to it long enough for the arc to complete. Many abandon their new identity before the return arrives. They project abundance for a week, then revert to doubt when results are not immediate. That interruption resets the cycle. Understand this carefully. The boomerang takes time to travel. Once thrown, it follows its path. If you change direction midway, you create interference. Stability is power. There is also a deeper layer. What you project toward others is what you strengthen within yourself. If you constantly criticize, you rehearse criticism internally. If you constantly appreciate, you rehearse appreciation internally. That internal rehearsal shapes identity. You cannot project resentment and expect harmony. You cannot project insecurity and expect admiration. You cannot project inconsistency and expect trust. The return always matches the projection. This does not mean you control every external detail. It means you influence the pattern through sustained internal unity. When your identity becomes coherent, life becomes coherent. Ask yourself honestly, what have I been throwing? Have you been throwing fear disguised as caution? Have you been throwing doubt disguised as realism? Have you been throwing small expectations to avoid disappointment? Each projection has been returning faithfully. If you want to change the return, change the throw. Do not chase the boomerang after it leaves your hand. Focus on the next projection. Stabilize it. Strengthen it. Remove contradiction. Unity also applies to self-perception. If you say, I value myself but tolerate disrespect, you split the signal. If you say, I am disciplined but repeatedly break promises to yourself, you weaken trust internally. Internal distrust reflects externally as instability. The boomerang law demands integrity. Integrity between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. When those align, projection becomes powerful. Do not fear this law. It empowers you. It means nothing is random. It means repetition can be redirected. It means that once you consistently project a new identity, the return must match. Be patient with the arc. Do not evaluate too early. Do not panic mid-flight. Remain unified. Remain coherent. Remain steady, because what you send with consistency will always find its way back to you. Now I want to show you something subtle that determines whether your new identity stabilizes or collapses, and that is what I call the security clause. The security clause is the hidden condition you attach to your transformation. It is the silent agreement that says, I will believe this as long as nothing challenges me. I will remain confident as long as no one criticizes me. I will feel abundant as long as money keeps increasing. I will stay calm as long as circumstances remain comfortable. That clause weakens your authority. It makes your identity conditional. If your sense of self depends on constant validation, It is fragile. If your peace depends on perfect timing, it is unstable. If your certainty depends on uninterrupted progress, it will fracture at the first delay. The security clause tells you that your new state must be protected by ideal conditions. But true authority does not require protection. It remains steady even when appearances fluctuate. You must remove the clause. You must say, I remain this identity regardless of temporary contradiction. I remain calm even if noise appears. I remain abundant even if numbers dip briefly. I remain chosen even if someone misunderstands me. This is inner security. Security does not mean you ignore reality. It means you do not allow reality to redefine you. When something unexpected occurs, the old self looks for escape. It says, maybe this new belief was wrong. Maybe I should return to caution. That is the security clause activating. It seeks safety in old patterns. But safety built on limitation is not security. It is stagnation. True security is internal coherence. It is the understanding that your identity is self-declared, not externally granted. There is also another dimension here, the blessing of silence. When you begin to shift identity, there is temptation to announce it, to explain your new mindset, to convince others of your transformation, but premature exposure invites unnecessary friction. Not everyone will understand your internal shift. Not everyone will mirror your new belief immediately. Silence protects incubation. When a seed is planted, it grows underground before it breaks the surface. If you constantly dig it up to show others, you interrupt the process. In the same way, when you constantly seek validation for your new identity, you weaken its root. The blessing of silence means you do not argue with skeptics. You do not defend your vision repeatedly. You allow your inner assumption to mature privately. Silence strengthens conviction because it removes the need for approval. You may have noticed that when you share goals too early, doubt increases, not necessarily from others, but from yourself. Their reactions trigger old insecurities. Silence eliminates that interference. It keeps your focus inward. Security and silence work together. When you are secure internally, you do not need constant reassurance. When you remain silent strategically, you protect your emotional stability. You let results speak instead of promises. There will be moments when you are tempted to prove yourself, to show that your new belief is justified. But proving carries tension. Authority does not prove. Authority embodies. You must ask yourself, where have I attached conditions to my identity? Have you said, I am confident unless I fail? I am disciplined unless I get tired. I am abundant unless expenses rise. Each unless weakens stability. Remove the unless. Remove the security clause. Decide that your chosen identity remains regardless of fluctuation. When you do this, something shifts. Challenges no longer feel like threats. They feel like tests of stability, and stability is power. When you remain calm in temporary contradiction, you send a clear message internally. You tell your nervous system that identity is not negotiable. You tell the law that your assumption is steady. Silence also deepens trust. When you do not constantly speak about what is forming, you give space for it to unfold without pressure. You remove the anxiety of performance. You allow alignment to operate quietly. The world does not need to know who you are becoming before you do. Protect your internal shift. Guard your emotional state. Speak less about your transformation and live it more consistently. Security without silence becomes fragile. Silence without security becomes avoidance. Together they create grounded authority. You are not here to announce your evolution. You are here to embody it. You are not here to defend your belief constantly. You are here to stabilize it. Remove the conditions. Remove the need for approval. Remove the urge to broadcast prematurely. Stand steady inwardly. Remain quiet externally when necessary. Because when your identity no longer depends on perfect circumstances and no longer seeks constant validation, it becomes unshakable. And an unshakable state eventually reshapes the visible world. Now we come to something deeper than technique, deeper than identity engineering, deeper than gratitude and certainty, and that is the silence of the master. Not silence as suppression, not silence as weakness, but silence as containment of power. When you truly understand who you are, you stop needing to announce it. When you truly assume your identity, you stop explaining it. When you truly command your inner world, you do not seek applause from the outer one. The master does not argue with appearances. The master does not panic when evidence is delayed. The master does not react to every fluctuation. The master seals the assumption inwardly and allows time to organize around it. This is not passivity. This is precision. You have spent much of your life reacting to opinions, reacting to numbers, reacting to moods, reacting to outcomes. Each reaction leaked energy. Each reaction reaffirmed that something outside you held authority. But mastery begins when reaction ends. When you choose not to emotionally engage with every temporary reflection, you conserve force. Silence is containment. When you assume something and then immediately speak about it with doubt, you weaken it. When you share your vision with those who cannot see it yet, you introduce noise. When you argue to defend your belief, you split your focus. Silence prevents fragmentation. This does not mean isolation. It means internal steadiness. It means your conviction does not require external validation. It means you do not need constant reassurance to maintain your state. When doubt appears externally, you do not chase it. You remain anchored. There is power in not reacting. When someone challenges you, and you remain calm, you communicate certainty. When circumstances fluctuate, and you remain composed, you communicate authority. That composure strengthens identity. Mastery also means restraint. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every impulse deserves expression. Not every fear deserves rehearsal. When you allow every passing doubt to become a conversation, you amplify it. When you observe it and remain silent, it dissolves. Silence sharpens perception. When you stop filling space with explanation, you begin to notice subtle alignment. You see opportunities more clearly. You feel intuition more precisely. Noise fades. Clarity increases. You do not need to broadcast your growth. Growth that is authentic becomes visible naturally. When you attempt to prove transformation, you reveal insecurity. When you embody it quietly, you reveal strength. Master's silence also seals intention. When you decide inwardly who you are, hold it. Do not renegotiate daily. Do not reopen the contract repeatedly. Decide and close it. The more you revisit it anxiously, the more unstable it feels. Closure creates solidity. This silence is not emptiness. It is presence. It is the refusal to let external noise override internal decision. It is the understanding that reality reflects sustained state, not dramatic declaration. There will be moments when you are tempted to react, to defend, to explain, to justify. That is the old identity seeking validation. Pause, breathe, return to your assumption. Let your steadiness speak instead of your words. Over time, this silence becomes natural. You stop announcing your certainty. You simply live from it. You stop chasing confirmation. You expect alignment. You stop arguing with the mirror. You adjust yourself and trust reflection. The master does not rush. The master does not panic. The master does not leak power through unnecessary reaction. The master seals the identity and allows the world to rearrange quietly. When you reach this point, manifestation becomes less dramatic and more inevitable. You no longer feel desperate. You no longer feel urgent. You feel settled, and settlement is strength. So seal your assumption. Protect it with calm. Remove the need to constantly speak about it. Remove the impulse to prove it. Remove the urge to react to every ripple. Let silence become your fortress. Let composure become your signal. Let certainty remain internal even when the outer world has not yet caught up. Because when you no longer react to appearances and no longer seek validation for your identity, you step into mastery, and mastery does not shout. It simply is.